What is a blockchain oracle? That's the topic of the day, but before we get into the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're interested in crypto. With that said, let's get started. Blockchain oracles are third-party services that provide smart contracts with external information. They serve as bridges between blockchains and the outside world. Blockchains and smart contracts cannot access off-chain data, which means data outside of the network. However, for many contractual agreements, it is vital to have relevant information from the outside world to execute the agreement. This is where blockchain oracles come into play. They provide a link between off-chain and on-chain data. Oracles are vital within the blockchain ecosystem because they broaden the scope in which smart contracts can operate. Without blockchain oracles, smart contracts would have very limited use as they would only have access to data from within their network. It is important to note that a blockchain oracle is not the data source itself, but rather the layer that queries, verifies, and authenticates external data sources and then relays that information. The data transmitted by oracles comes in many forms. For example, price information, the successful completion of a payment, or the temperature measured by a sensor. To call data from the outside world, the smart contract has to be invoked and the network resources have to be spent. Some oracles also have the ability to not only relay information to smart contracts, but to send it back to external sources. Many different types of oracles exist. How a blockchain oracle operates is entirely dependent on what it is designed for. But what are the different types of blockchain oracles? Blockchain oracles can be classified depending on a number of different qualities. The first one is the source. Does the data originate from a software or a hardware? The second one is direction of information. Is it inbound or outbound? And the third one, trust. Is it centralized or decentralized? A single oracle can fall into multiple categories. For example, an oracle that sources information from a company website is a centralized inbound software oracle. Let's have a look at software oracles. Software oracles interact with online sources of information and transmit it to the blockchain. This information can come from online databases, servers, website, essentially any data source on the web. The fact that software oracles are connected to the internet not only allows them to supply information to smart contracts, but also to transmit the information in real time. This makes them one of the most common types of blockchain oracles. Information typically provided by software oracles can include exchange rates, digital asset prices, or real-time flight information. Now, let's look at hardware oracles. Some smart contracts need to interface with the real world. Hardware oracles are designed to get information from the physical world and make it available to smart contracts. Such information could be relayed from electronic sensors, barcode scanners, and other information reading devices. A hardware oracle essentially translates real-world events into digital values that can be understood by smart contracts. An example of this could be a sensor that checks if a truck transporting goods has arrived at the loading bay. If it does, it relays the information to a smart contract that then can execute decisions based on it. Now, let's have a look at inbound and outbound oracles. Inbound oracles transmit information from external sources to smart contracts, while outbound oracles send information from smart contracts to the external world. An example of an inbound oracle is one that tells a smart contract what the temperature is measured by a sensor. An example of an outbound oracle can be considered with a smart lock. If funds are deposited to an address, the smart contract sends this information through an outbound oracle to a mechanism that unlocks the smart lock. And last but not least, let's have a look at centralized and decentralized oracles. A centralized oracle is controlled by a single entity and is the sole provider for information for the smart contract. Using only one source of information can be risky. The effectiveness of the contract depends entirely on the entity controlling the oracle. Also, any malicious interference from a bad actor will have a direct impact on the smart contract. The main problem with centralized oracles is the existence of a single point of failure, which makes the contract less resilient to attacks. Decentralized oracles share some of the same objectives as public blockchains, avoiding counterparty risk. They increase reliability of information provided to smart contracts by not relying on a single source of truth. The smart contract queries multiple oracles to determine the validity and accuracy of the data. This is why decentralized oracles can also be referred to as consensus oracles. While decentralized oracles aim to achieve trustlessness, it is important to note that just like other trustless blockchain networks, decentralized oracles do not completely eliminate trust, but rather distribute it between many participants. But there are some problems with oracles. Let's have a look at them. Since smart contracts execute decisions based on data provided by oracles, they are key to a healthy blockchain ecosystem. The main challenge with designing oracles is that if the oracle is compromised, the smart contract relying on it is also compromised. This is often referred to as the oracle problem. Since oracles are not part of the main blockchain consensus, they are unfortunately not part of the security mechanism that public blockchains can provide. The trust conflict between third-party oracles and the trustless execution of smart contracts remains a mostly unsolved issue. Man-in-the-middle attacks can also be a threat, where malicious actors gains access to the data flow between the oracles and the contract and modifies or falsifies the data. Final thoughts about oracles. A reliable mechanism that facilitates communication between smart contracts and the external world is vital to the global adoption of blockchains. Without blockchain oracles, smart contracts would have to rely only on information already within the networks, which would considerably limit their capabilities. Decentralized oracles have the potential to introduce safeguard mechanisms that could eliminate a lot of systemic risk from the blockchain ecosystem. Blockchain oracles remain one of the critical building blocks to be implemented in a secure, reliable and trustless manner for the blockchain ecosystem to grow. With that said, we are at the end of our video. Leave a like and subscribe if you're interested in cryptocurrencies and want to learn more about it. Peace out.